Blackthorne Manor sat on the edge of a forgotten forest, its stone walls weathered by centuries of secrets and suffering. Once a grand estate, it was now an abandoned relic, its windows shattered, and its halls swallowed by shadows. But the locals whispered about something far more menacing than decay, something that haunted the house with a cruelty only death could unleash. Evelyn Cross, a young historian, arrived in the nearby village with the hope of unlocking Blackthorne's mysteries. She had heard the tales. A cruel nobleman, Lord Cedric Blackthorne, who had perished in a violent fire centuries ago, his cruelty said to have been so immense that his soul never truly left the manor. His ghost, they said, whispered through the halls, feeding on the fear of any who dared enter. Despite the warnings, Evelyn was driven by an insatiable curiosity. On a cold autumn night, she ventured into Blackthorne Manor, armed with nothing but a flashlight and a notebook. The air was thick with an unnatural chill, and as she stepped over the threshold, she felt something stir. The manor groaned, the floorboards creaking as if alive beneath her feet. She moved cautiously through the grand foyer, past the faded portraits of Lord Blackthorne and his victim servants, rivals, and even family members who had all met violent ends under his hand. Evelyn could almost feel their eyes following her as she climbed the staircase to the second floor. At the end of the hall stood the door to Cedric Blackthorne's chamber, a place said to be cursed, where the whispers of his ghost were most intense. As she approached, a low voice began to hum through the air. It was faint at first, barely discernible, but it grew louder with every step. Asterisk Evelyn. Asterisk, the whisper sent a shiver down her spine. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. The voice was seductive yet sinister, like a lover's soft caress hiding the edge of a blade. She pressed on, her hand trembling as she turned the brass doorknob and stepped inside the chamber. It was untouched by time, just as it had been the night of the fire. The bed was draped in tattered velvet, and the heavy curtains hung limp over the windows. But the most striking feature was the large mirror that covered an entire wall, its surface cracked like a spider's web. Evelyn approached the mirror, drawn by some unseen force. Her reflection was distorted, fragmented by the cracks, but behind her, she saw something that froze her blood. A figure, tall and gaunt, with hollow eyes and a cruel smile, stood just behind her. She spun around, but there was nothing there. Asterisk Evelyn. Asterisk, the voice whispered again, this time directly in her ear. She stumbled backward, her heart pounding as she watched the mirror. The figure reappeared, slowly emerging from the cracks, its face twisted in a sneer of malevolent delight. Lord Cedric Blackthorne had returned. He moved closer, his eyes gleaming with a hunger that transcended death. Evelyn felt his cold breath on her neck, her skin prickling, as he whispered once more, Asterisk, I've been waiting for you. Asterisk, before she could scream, icy hands wrapped around her throat, squeezing with a strength that defied his spectral form. She gasped for air, her vision blurring as the pressure mounted. The last thing she saw before darkness consumed her was Blackthorne's reflection, his eyes glinting with savage pleasure. Evelyn awoke hours later, lying on the cold floor of the chamber. The ghost was gone, but the bruises on her neck told her it had been real. She staggered to her feet, her body trembling, and fled the manor, swearing never to return. But as she reached the safety of her car, she noticed something strange. In the rearview mirror, Cedric Blackthorne's cruel smile was still there, lingering just behind her shoulder. She never made it back to the village. Days later, locals found her car abandoned on the road leading away from the manor, the inside stained with something dark and red. No one knows what happened to Evelyn Cross, but some say that when the wind howls through Blackthorne Manor, you can still hear her whispers, mingling with the ghost of Lord Cedric Blackthorne trapped in his cruel grasp for all eternity. And the manor waits, ever hungry, for the next soul to cross its threshold. The story never ends, it merely waits for the next chapter to unfold. The village remained haunted by Evelyn Cross's disappearance. Though her car was found abandoned, the authorities couldn't find a trace of her. Whispers began to circulate, old rumors resurfacing. They spoke of the restless dead, of Lord Cedric Blackthorne's cruel ghost feeding on the living. The manor's reputation had always been tainted, but now it was darker than ever. Weeks passed, and another stranger arrived in the village, Isaac Thorne, a paranormal investigator known for seeking out the most cursed and dangerous places. Unlike Evelyn, Isaac was not here for historical curiosity or mere research. He had spent years hunting dark entities, driven by a personal vendetta after losing his brother to a haunting much like this one. Isaac's arrival sparked concern among the locals, who pleaded with him to leave Blackthorne Manor alone. But Isaac had no intention of backing down. He believed that Evelyn Cross was still trapped in the manor, held captive by something ancient and malevolent. He intended to free her whatever the cost. On a stormy night, Isaac made his way to the manor. The wind howled through the trees, and the rain battered the windows as he approached. The manor loomed before him like a beast waiting to strike. But Isaac was prepared. He had faced ghosts, poltergeists, and even demonic entities before. What was one cruel spirit compared to the horrors he had already endured? The front door creaked open on its own, welcoming him into the dark maw of the manor. The interior was as decayed as he expected, peeling wallpaper, rotting wood, and dust that seemed to hang in the air like a suffocating fog. Yet, as soon as he crossed the threshold, Isaac felt it, a cold, oppressive presence watching his every move. He set up his equipment, placing cameras and meters in strategic locations. The house seemed still, eerily so, as if it were holding its breath. Isaac stood in the grand foyer, waiting, his flashlight casting long, trembling shadows on the walls. It wasn't long before the whispers began. Isaac. The voice was low, almost seductive, and it sent a chill down his spine. He didn't flinch, though. He had expected this. You shouldn't have come. The whisper curled around him, a venomous hiss that felt almost tangible. Isaac turned toward the source of the voice up the grand staircase to the second floor. The air was colder here, thick with something unnatural. He could hear the faint sound of footsteps, too soft to be his own. They echoed down the corridor, leading him toward the cursed chamber. He reached the door to Cedric Blackthorne's room, just as Evelyn had. The air around it seemed to vibrate with tension, the kind of stillness that only precedes something terrible. Isaac hesitated, then pushed the door open. The room was exactly as he had read in the reports Untouched by Time, with the cracked mirror looming over everything like a dark portal. The temperature dropped sharply as he stepped inside, and the whispers grew louder. Isaac. Isaac? It wasn't just one voice now, it was many, all swirling around him like a vortex of malice. He approached the mirror, and just like Evelyn, he saw his reflection twist and distort. But this time, the figure behind him wasn't just a flicker of an image, it was real. Lord Cedric Blackthorne stood there, his eyes burning with malevolent hunger. Isaac felt the cold grip of invisible hands tighten around his neck, but unlike Evelyn, he was prepared. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small vial of blessed salt, throwing it behind him. The ghost recoiled, hissing in fury, but the grip on his throat lessened. Isaac turned to face the specter, his breath heavy but controlled. He'd faced worse, but Blackthorne's ghost was stronger than most. Isaac pulled out a worn journal from his bag, one filled with ancient incantations and protections. He began to chant, his voice steady despite the growing sense of dread. But something went wrong. The whispers grew louder, and the air became stifling. The ghost didn't disappear. Instead, it smiled, a twisted, cruel grin that made Isaac's blood run cold. The room began to shift, the walls closing in as if the manor itself were alive, trying to trap him within its dark embrace. Isaac's incantations faltered as he realized something horrifying. Cedric Blackthorne wasn't the only spirit haunting this manor. The whispers weren't just from Blackthorne, they were from others, victims, trapped souls, entities bound by the same cruel force that had kept Blackthorne from the afterlife. He wasn't facing just one ghost. He was facing a legion. The air grew heavier, and Isaac felt the pressure around him building. He was outnumbered, outmatched. His only chance was to escape. He turned and ran for the door, but it slammed shut with a deafening bang. Panic surged in his chest as he realized that the manor was sealing him in, just as it had Evelyn. As he struggled to pry the door open, he heard something that made his blood freeze, a soft, barely audible whisper. Isaac, help me. It was Evelyn's voice. He spun around, his eyes wide with disbelief. In the corner of the room, barely visible through the swirling darkness, he saw her pale, gaunt, her eyes filled with desperation. She was trapped, just as he had feared, but now she was something more, something less than human. Before Isaac could react, the cold hands returned, gripping him with unimaginable strength. The last thing he saw before he was pulled into the darkness was Evelyn's outstretched hand, her face twisted in sorrow and regret. And then, just like Evelyn, Isaac was gone. Blackthorne Manor remained silent once more, but the whispers never ceased. They echoed through the halls, beckoning the curious and the brave, drawing them into its deadly grasp. And so the manor waits, ever patient, for its next victim, another soul to join the ranks of the damned. The story continues, always. Months passed, and Blackthorne Manor stood silent as always, the whispers now fading into the background of village life. Evelyn and Isaac had become mere legends, their stories blending with the countless other souls who had vanished in the manor's grip. Few dared to even speak of the place anymore, save for the occasional thrill-seeker who quickly learned their mistake. The village became quieter, more withdrawn, as if it, too, was slipping into the ghostly clutches of the manor. Then, on a night when the moon hung full and heavy in the sky, a new visitor arrived. Amelia Blackthorne, a descendant of the Blackthorne bloodline, had come to claim her inheritance, the estate she had never known, but always felt connected to. She had heard the stories, of course. Her parents had warned her to stay away, had moved far from the village when she was a child. But Amelia felt the pull of her ancestral home like a chain around her heart. Something called her back. The manor was hers by birthright, and she intended to tame whatever dark forces lingered within its walls. Amelia was strong-willed, driven by the belief that she could end the curse that had plagued her family for generations. She entered the manor with her head held high, stepping over the threshold with a confidence born of arrogance. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and though the whispers began almost immediately, Amelia ignored them. She was not afraid. She believed that as a Blackthorne, the manor would obey her will. The shadows seemed to bend toward her as she made her way through the halls, but she pressed on, determined to confront whatever haunted her lineage. Finally, she reached the chamber that had swallowed both Evelyn and Isaac. The door was already ajar, as if waiting for her. Amelia stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room. It was just as she had imagined, stuck in time, the weight of centuries pressing down on her. But she wasn't here to cower. She approached the mirror, daring whatever force lay behind it to reveal itself. Cedric. She said aloud, her voice firm. I know you're here. I'm here to end this. For a moment, there was silence. Then the whispers surged, filling the room with a cacophony of voices, some pleading, some mocking, some filled with rage. The mirror cracked further, splintering into 1,000 more shards, each reflecting a piece of Amelia's face, distorting her into something monstrous. And then Cedric appeared. His figure materialized slowly, his cruel smile as sharp as the broken glass. He looked at Amelia, his eyes gleaming with recognition. Blood of my blood. He whispered, his voice dripping with malice. Amelia stood her ground. I'm not afraid of you. She said, her voice cold. But Cedric's smile only grew wider. You should be. The air around her tightened. The same cold hands that had claimed so many before now wrapping themselves around Amelia's throat. She gasped, her eyes widening as she realized the truth. She wasn't stronger than the curse. She was a part of it. Cedric leaned in close, his breath icy on her skin. Did you think you could end this? That you could escape what runs in your veins? He laughed, a hollow, cruel sound that echoed through the chamber. Foolish girl. You were always meant to join us. Amelia tried to struggle, but the grip was too strong. She felt the life draining from her, the whispers growing louder as if celebrating her demise. Her vision blurred, and she saw, just for a moment, the faint outline of Evelyn and Isaac standing in the corner, their eyes empty, their faces pale. They had become part of the manor, now trapped, just as she would be. As Amelia's strength faded, Cedric's grin grew impossibly wide. He leaned in closer, whispering into her ear. Asterisk, welcome home. Asterisk, and with that, she was gone. Amelia Blackthorne's body was never found, just like all the others. The manor swallowed her whole, absorbing her spirit into its dark core. The whispers in the village grew quieter once more, but those who ventured too close to the manor could still hear them, the soft, desperate cries of those who had been lost, calling out for help that would never come. And in the mirror, Cedric Blackthorne stood, watching, waiting for the next fool to cross his threshold, his legacy of cruelty eternal. The manor would never be satisfied, and it would continue to lure the living into its cold embrace for as long as time itself endured. Blackthorne Manor was not just haunted, it was a prison for souls, bound to Cedric's cruel will, forever. The story had no true ending, only an endless cycle of torment, a curse that would continue as long as the manor stood. And Cedric Blackthorne, ever patient, would be there, waiting with his wicked smile, ready to claim whoever dared to challenge him next. No one ever escaped Blackthorne Manor. No one ever would.